kiss her, just like in the movie." The chant started as a low rumble in the VIP section of the rooftop lounge, fueled by expensive champagne and the heady rush of a box office smash before swelling into a roar that drowned out the thrumming bass of the music. Liam West, the man of the hour, the man Charlotte had spent the last 4 years loving in the shadows, stood in the center of the circle. He looked every inch the Hollywood golden boy, tuxedo jacket unbuttoned, tie loose, a glass of scotch in one hand, and his co-star, Bella Sinclair, in the other. They looked at each other, that practiced electric chemistry sparking under the flashbulbs. Liam flashed that crooked, charming grin that had plastered billboards across America, and then, without a second's hesitation, he dipped Bella low and planted a searing kiss on her lips. The crowd went feral. Charlotte stood on the periphery, holding Liam's vintage leather jacket, feeling the cold night air of Los Angeles bite through her thin silk dress. She wasn't the lead actress. She wasn't even the celebrated director. To the people in this room, she was just Charlie, the quiet, efficient girl who fetched Liam's protein shakes, read lines with him until 3 a.m., and warmed his bed when the cameras stopped rolling. "Hey, isn't that Charlie over there?" A drunk producer slurred, pointing a heavy finger at her. The crowd quieted down, a cruel, expectant hush falling over the terrace. "Liam, why don't you give the little assistant a kiss too? She worked hard on this shoot, didn't she? A consolation prize." Laughter rippled through the group. It was sharp, jagged, and humiliating. Charlotte's eyes locked onto Liam's. She waited. She waited for him to step in, to laugh it off, to say she's more than that, or even just to tell them to shut up. She waited for the man who had once sworn he loved her more than fame itself to protect her. Liam didn't move towards her. He didn't even let go of Bella's waist. Instead, his eyes flickered with annoyance, not at the producer, but at her presence, at the awkwardness she was causing him. "Come on, guys, let's not," Liam said, his voice smooth but dismissive, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Charlie's shy. Besides, let's keep the magic for the screen, right?" Liam called it magic. Charlotte called it what it was: dismissal. He didn't defend her. He managed her. Like a PR problem, like an inconvenient prop that wandered into frame 4 years. And she still didn't rate A, "She is with me." Just Charlie's shy, as if her humiliation was a personality trait, not his creation. He turned his back on her. He turned back to Bella, who was giggling behind her hand, whispering something in his ear that made him throw his head back and laugh. That laughter severed the last thread holding Charlotte's heart together. For 4 years, she had played the role of the supportive partner. She was Charlotte Sterling, heiress to one of the East Coast's oldest and most formidable banking empires, a woman who could buy and sell this entire rooftop bar 10 times over. But for Liam, she had become Charlie. She had stripped away her family name, her connections, and her pride, believing that his talent was fragile and needed protecting, believing his promise that once he made it big, they wouldn't have to hide anymore. He had made it big, and she was still hiding. The realization didn't come with tears. It came with a sudden, icy clarity. The man she loved didn't exist. He was a character Liam played, just like the hero in the movie, and she had been the only one dumb enough to buy a ticket. Charlotte walked forward. The crowd parted, expecting her to run away or maybe beg for a scrap of attention. She stopped right in front of Liam. The noise of the party seemed to fade into a dull buzz. "Here," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was steady, cutting through the ambient noise like a diamond cutter on glass. She held out his jacket. Liam looked at her, his brow furrowing. "Charlie, not now. We'll talk later." "There is no later, Liam," she said. She dropped the jacket. It hit the expensive floor tiles with a heavy thud right at his polished shoes. "I'm done. The role of the doormat has been recast." Bella gasped, her eyes widening in mock scandal. "Charlie, are you drunk? Don't ruin Liam's big night just because you are jealous." Charlotte didn't even look at Bella. She kept her gaze fixed on Liam. "I am not jealous, Bella. I am bored, and I am awake." She turned on her heel. "Charlie," Liam's voice cracked with a hint of panic. Not because he was losing her, she realized, but because she was going off script. "If you walk out now, don't expect to come back." Charlotte didn't stop. She walked past the gaping producers, past the starlets judging her off, the rack dress, past the bouncers, and into the elevator. She pressed the button for the lobby, watching the doors slide shut on the glitz, the noise, and the man who had consumed 4 years of her life. As the elevator descended, silence wrapped around her. She didn't cry. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Her fingers hovered over a number she hadn't dialed in years, a number she had promised herself she would only call when she had made a name for herself, on her own terms. She hit dial. It rang once, twice. Charlotte. A deep, familiar voice answered, sharp with surprise and immediate protective alertness. It was Harrison, her brother, the head of the Sterling dynasty. "Harry," she said, her voice finally trembling, not with sadness, but with the relief of letting go of a heavy burden. "I'm done playing pretend. I want to come home." There was a pause on the other end, followed by the sound of a chair being pushed back. Movement, decisive action. "I'll have the jet in Van Nuys in an hour. Pack only what matters, leave the rest." "There is nothing here that matters," Charlotte whispered. "Then leave it all," Harrison said, his voice turning cold as steel. "Come home, Lottie, we've missed you." She hung up and stepped out into the cool California night. A light drizzle had started to fall, misting against her face. She took a deep breath, smelling the asphalt and the ocean. She blocked Liam's number. She blocked Bella's. She deleted her social media apps tomorrow. The tabloids would run stories about the jealous assistant who caused a scene. Let them. By the time they went to print, Charlie would be gone. Charlotte Sterling was returning to a world where Liam West would need an appointment just to speak to her secretary. The game was over. The real show was just beginning. 3 weeks later, the air was different. Gone was the smog and desperation of Los Angeles. In its place was the crisp, salt-tinged breeze of the Hamptons. The world here moved at a slower, more deliberate pace, dictated by tea times, charity galas, and the quiet clink of silver against fine china. Charlotte sat at a corner table on the terrace of the Maidstone Club, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable behind dark sunglasses. She wore a simple cream cashmere sweater and linen trousers, an outfit that cost more than her entire wardrobe back in her Charlie days. "You haven't touched your mimosa, darling," her mother, Eleanor Sterling, observed, reaching across the table to pat Charlotte's hand. Her mother's concern was layered under layers of social grace, but it was there. "Are you still adjusting?" "I am fine, Mother," Charlotte said, removing her sunglasses. Her eyes were clear, though perhaps a shade more guarded than before. "Just thinking." "Well, try not to think too hard. Today is about reconnecting," Eleanor said, glancing towards the entrance. "The Thorns are joining us. You remember Julian, don't you? Harrison said you two used to run in the same circles during your summers here as teenagers." Julian Thorne, the name brought back vague memories of a quiet, serious boy who preferred reading on the dock to sailing regattas. The Thorne family was old money, even by Sterling standards, real estate, publishing, tech investments. They were the kind of family that didn't make the news because they owned the news. "Vaguely," Charlotte murmured. She knew what this was. A soft setup. A merger disguised as brunch. After her rebellious phase in Hollywood, her parents were eager to see her settled within the safety of their own world. Surprisingly, she didn't hate the idea. The thought of passion, of fiery, destructive love, like she had with Liam, now tasted like ash in her mouth. Stability sounded restful. A shadow fell over the table. "Eleanor, Robert, so good to see you." Charlotte looked up. The boy from her memories had been replaced by a man who seemed to command the very air around him. Julian Thorne was tall, wearing a navy blazer that fit his broad shoulders with military precision. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, a few threads of silver at the temples suggesting wisdom rather than age. But it was his eyes that caught her, gray, calm, and utterly lacking the hungry, restless energy she was used to in Lamen. Julian. Her father boomed, standing to shake his hand. "Good of you to make time for us." "For the Sterlings always," Julian said. His voice was deep, a smooth baritone that vibrated pleasantly in the air. He turned to her. "And this must be Charlotte. It's been a long time." He didn't look at her like a prize to be won or a connection to be exploited. He looked at her with simple, polite recognition. "It has," Charlotte said, extending her hand. His grip was warm and firm, brief but solid. "Please, call me Charlotte, Charlie. Charlie didn't come back from the West Coast." Julian's eyebrow quirked slightly, a flicker of intrigue passing through his gaze. "Charlotte, it is. A strong name. It suits you." The brunch proceeded with the rehearsed ease of their social stratum. They discussed market trends, the upcoming sailing season, and the preservation of the local lighthouse. Julian spoke little, but when he did, he was insightful, his observations sharp but never unkind. He listened more than he talked, a trait so rare in Charlotte's recent life that it felt almost exotic. As coffee was served, the parents conveniently decided to greet acquaintances at another table, leaving Charlotte and Julian alone in the dappled sunlight. The silence stretched, not awkward, but comfortable. Julian took a sip of his black coffee, setting the cup down with a soft click. "So," he started, looking directly at her. "The rumor mill says you are recovering from a broken heart. My mother says I am in need of a wife who understands our world. I assume that's why we're both here." Charlotte blinked, startled by his directness. It was refreshing. "You don't beat around the bush, do you?" "I value efficiency," Julian said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "And I suspect you've had enough of games." "You have no idea," Charlotte let out a dry laugh, looking out at the manicured lawn. "Yes, I suppose that is why we're here. I'm damaged goods, Julian. I spent 4 years erasing myself for a man who traded me in for a tabloid headline. I'm not sure I have much left to offer in the way of romance." "I am not asking for romance," Julian replied evenly. "I am looking for a partner, someone I respect, someone who knows the weight of a legacy and doesn't buckle under it. As for damaged goods," he leaned forward slightly, his gray eyes intense, "I prefer to think of it as tested. You went out there. You tried something real. You got burned, and you survived. That shows resilience. I like resilience." Charlotte felt a lump form in her throat. She had expected judgment, or perhaps pity. She hadn't expected validation. "And what do you get out of it?" she asked, her voice softer. "Peace," Julian said simply. "A life without the constant pressure to find the one. A companion to build something lasting with." And he paused, looking at her with a newfound appreciation. "I suspect our conversations won't be boring. Is that a proposal, Mr. Thorne?" "Let's call it a proposition for a strategic alliance," he corrected, though his eyes were warm. We start with dinner next week, no pressure. Just getting to know the person who came back from the West Coast. Charlotte looked at him, really looked at him. He was handsome. Yes, but more importantly, he was real. He was solid ground after years at sea. Dinner sounds acceptable, she said, a genuine smile finally reaching her eyes. Good. Julian checked his watch, a vintage Patek Philippe. Would you like to walk? The gardens are quite nice this time of year. And I believe your father is currently cornering the club president about the greens fees. We should probably make ourselves scarce. Charlotte laughed, a sound that surprised her with its lightness. She stood up. As she did, her linen napkin snagged on the edge of the table, sending her fork clattering to the ground. Before she could even bend down, Julian was there. He picked up the fork, placed it on a side plate, and then, noticing her shoelace on her espadrille had come undone. He didn't straighten up immediately. Instead, Julian Thorne, CEO of Thorne Capital, went down on one knee on the terrace of the Maidstone Club. With efficient, gentle movements, he retied the silk ribbon of her shoe. He didn't make a show of it. He didn't look around to see who was watching. He just did it because it needed doing. There, he said, standing up and brushing off his knee. Can't have you tripping. The path is gravel. Julian Thorne, CEO, billionaire, man who could buy small countries, knelt on gravel to tie her shoe. Not for the cameras, not for the story. Because it needed doing. Liam made Charlotte carry his jacket in the rain. Julian made sure she wouldn't trip on a garden path. That is not romance, that is respect. And Charlotte had forgotten what that looked like. Charlotte stared at him, her heart doing a strange, unfamiliar flip in her chest. Liam had never tied her shoes. Liam used to walk 10 paces ahead of her, complaining if she lagged behind. Thank you, she whispered. Shall we? He offered his arm. Charlotte slipped her hand into the crook of his elbow. The fabric of his jacket was rough and expensive under her fingers. He felt strong. He felt safe. We shall, she said. As they walked away from the terrace, Charlotte didn't notice the flash of a phone camera from a nearby table. Capturing the moment the Ice King Julian Thorne knelt for the prodigal Sterling daughter. Nor did she care, for the first time in a long time, she wasn't walking in anyone's shadow. She was walking beside someone, and the view from here was spectacular. The picture of Julian kneeling to tie Charlotte's shoe didn't just stay on a random phone. By Monday morning, it was everywhere. The Prince of Wall Street kneels for mystery woman, Julian Thorne, off the market. Who is the Cinderella of the Hamptons, ex-actress? Charlie resurfaces as Charlotte Sterling. The internet, as usual, had done its detective work with terrifying speed. Within hours, the narrative shifted from a romantic mystery to a scandalous revelation. Side-by-side photos appeared. One of a disheveled Charlie holding Liam West's jacket at the disastrous wrap party, looking small and defeated. The other of Charlotte Sterling, radiant in cream cashmere, looking down at one of New York's most eligible bachelors with a soft smile. Charlotte sat in her brother's office in the Sterling Tower, scrolling through the comments on her iPad with a detached fascination. Wait, that assistant girl is a Sterling. Liam West fumbled the bag of the century. She looks so much happier. Julian Thorne is a massive upgrade. Gold digger, honey. She is the gold mine. But not all comments were kind. Bella Sinclair's fan base had mobilized. She's just trying to make Liam jealous, pathetic. On's a doormat. Always a doormat. Julian will get bored too. Stop reading that trash, Lottie, Harrison said, snatching the iPad from her hands. He tossed it onto his mahogany desk. It's beneath you. It's fascinating, Harry, Charlotte replied, leaning back in the leather chair. 3 weeks ago, I was invisible. Now I'm a topic of national debate. Fame is such a fickle, ugly thing. It's about to get uglier, Harrison warned, his expression grim. Liam's publicist has been calling. They want a joint statement clarifying that your breakup was amicable. They're terrified this new identity of yours will hurt his everyman image if people realize he treated a sterling like a servant. Let them panic, Charlotte said coolly. I'm not signing anything. Just then, her phone buzzed. It wasn't Liam, it was Julian. Lunch? I know a place in Tribeca that has zero paparazzi and excellent truffles. A smile tugged at her lips despite herself. Go, Harrison said, seeing her expression. He's a good man, Lottie. And right now, being seen with him is the best protection you can have. It sends a message. The restaurant Julian chose was tucked away behind an unmarked door, an exclusive members only club that catered to people who valued privacy over prestige. I saw the news, Julian said after they had ordered. He didn't look worried. He looked amused. My PR team is having a field day. Apparently, our engagement is trending higher than the Knicks game. I'm sorry, Charlotte sighed, swirling her water. I didn't mean to drag you into my drama. My past is messy. We all have pasts, Charlotte. Julian reached across the table, his hand covering hers. His skin was warm. The difference is, yours is currently being rewritten, and I happen to like the new draft. Even if it comes with an army of internet trolls calling me a rebound, let them talk, Julian shrugged. Lions don't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. Besides, he pulled out his phone. I took the liberty of posting something. I hope you don't mind. Charlotte opened her own phone. There on Julian's official, rarely used Instagram account was a new photo. It wasn't the viral shoe tying picture. It was a candid shot from moments later, just their backs, walking away into the gardens, arm in arm. The caption was simple, just 2 words, my future. No tags, no explanations, just a quiet, undeniable claim, Julian. Charlotte breathed, looking up at him. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to, he said simply. It's time people knew you aren't just someone's ex or someone's sister. You're with me, and I protect what's mine. The sentiment was possessive. Yes, but it didn't feel stifling like Liam's control. It felt like a shield. Before she could respond, a commotion at the entrance drew their attention. A man was arguing with the maitre d', his voice rising in frustration. Do you know who I am? I need to speak to her. Charlotte froze. She knew that voice. It was the voice that used to whisper sweet nothings in her ear before screaming at her for forgetting his dry cleaning. Liam West pushed past the staff, looking frantic. He was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, a poor disguise for one of the most recognizable faces in America. He scanned the room, spotting Charlotte instantly. Charlie, he shouted, striding towards their table. Julian didn't even stand up. He just turned his head, his expression shifting from warm to glacial in a microsecond. Charlotte, Liam corrected himself, as he got closer, stopping breathlessly at their table. He ignored Julian entirely. We need to talk. Now, you can't just ghost me and then pop up dating him. He gestured wildly at Julian. Do you know what this is doing to my press tour? People are saying, I used you, didn't you? Charlotte asked, her voice calm. She didn't stand up either. She didn't feel the urge to run or hide. Sitting next to Julian, she felt untouchable. It's complicated. You know how the industry works. Liam raked a hand through his hair. Look, Bella means nothing. It's just for the movie. Come back to LA. I'll fire the publicist. We can fix this. I miss you, Charlie. I can't do this without you. It was the same speech he'd given a dozen times before. I need you. You're the only one who understands me. It used to work. It used to make her feel special. Now, it just sounded pathetic. Mr. West, Julian spoke up. His voice was low, devoid of anger, but heavy with authority. You are interrupting our lunch. Liam sneered at him. Stay out of this suit. You don't know us. You don't know what we have. I know that you had a diamond, and you treated it like a stone, Julian said, cutting him off. He stood up then, towering over the actor. Liam was handsome in a glossy magazine way, but Julian was imposing. He carried the weight of power that wasn't dependent on box office returns. And I know that she has asked you to leave. She didn't say that. Liam turned to Charlotte, his eyes pleading. Tell him, Charlie. Tell him we belong together. Charlotte looked at Liam, really looked at him. She saw the panic in his eyes, not heartbreak, but fear. Fear of losing his anchor, fear of the bad press. You're right, Julian, Charlotte said. Turning her gaze back to the man beside her, she picked up her wine glass. I'd like to enjoy my truffle risotto in peace. She didn't look at Liam again. You heard the lady, Julian said. Security is on their way. I suggest you leave before the paparazzi outside get a shot of you being escorted out. That wouldn't fit the hero narrative, would it? Liam stood there for a moment, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He looked from Charlotte's indifferent profile to Julian's steel gaze. Defeated, he spun around and stormed out, muttering curses under his breath. As the door closed behind him, the tension in the room dissipated. Julian sat back down, adjusting his cuffs. My apologies, he said. I thought this place had better screening. It wasn't the restaurant's fault, Charlotte said. She reached out and took Julian's hand again. Thank you for standing up, but mostly for letting me speak for myself. Always, Julian squeezed her hand, though I must say his acting is better on screen. That speech was terrible. Charlotte laughed, and this time it was full and free. He needs a new writer, but I'm retired from that job. Good, Julian smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Because I have a feeling your new role is going to be much more fulfilling. Under the table, he didn't let go of her hand, and Charlotte didn't want him to. The ghost of Charlie was fading, exorcised by the reality of a man who saw her, heard her, and held her fast. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind, not of chaos, but of quiet, luxurious integration. Charlotte found herself slipping into Julian's world with an ease that surprised her. It wasn't just the galas or the charity auctions. It was the Sunday mornings reading the paper in his Tribeca penthouse, the late-night discussions about art and politics, the way he knew exactly how she took her tea, Earl Grey, splash of milk, no sugar, without ever having to ask. He didn't try to change her. When she mentioned missing acting, he didn't scoff. Instead, he bought her a first edition play script of A Streetcar Named Desire and encouraged her to join the board of a prestigious Manhattan theater company. He valued her mind, her background, her essence. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, the storm was brewing. Liam's new movie, despite the initial hype, was tanking. Critics called his performance hollow and uninspired. Without Charlotte to run lines with him, to break down the emotional beats of every scene, his acting had lost its depth. Bella Sinclair wasn't helping. Her social media antics, posting bikini photos from Liam's pool with captions like Queen of the Castle, were alienating his core fan base. Desperation makes people do foolish things. Charlotte was in her family's library, reviewing grant proposals for the theater. When Harrison strode in, he looked like the cat that had not only eaten the canary, but also acquired the deed to the canary's cage. Remember that little production company Liam started, Mirage Studios? Harrison asked, pouring himself a scotch. Vaguely, Charlotte replied, not looking up. He leveraged everything to fund it, said he wanted creative control. Well, he has no control now. Harrison took a sip, savoring the burn. He overextended. Several of his investments went south, and with the box office numbers dropping, his creditors got nervous. They called in the loans. Charlotte looked up, a sinking feeling in her stomach, not for Liam, but for the inevitability of what her brother was about to say. And Julian and I bought the debt, Harrison grinned, a shark. Like expression that mirrored their father's. As of this morning, Sterling, Thorne Holdings owns Mirage Studios. Effectively, we own Liam West. Charlotte put down her pen. You bought his company. Why? Busyness, Lottie. Their library has value, and this studio lot is prime real estate. Harrison shrugged, but his eyes danced. And admittedly, a little bit of pleasure. Julian thought it would be poetic. Julian, Charlotte blinked. This was his idea. He approached me last week, said he didn't want you to ever worry about that man using your name for clout again. Now, if Liam wants to work, he works for us. If he wants to speak to the press, he clears it with us. We control the narrative. Before Charlotte could process this, her phone rang. It was an unknown number, but she knew who it was. She answered, putting it on speaker. Charlie? Liam's voice was ragged, stripped of all its usual charm. Is it true? Did you buy me? I didn't buy you, Liam, Charlotte said calmly. Harrison and Julian bought a failing asset. This is revenge, isn't it? He spat. You're ruining me because I didn't choose you. No, Liam, Charlotte said, feeling a strange sense of pity. You ruined yourself. You chose the spotlight over substance. And now the bulb has burned out. We're just changing the fixture. I'll sue. I'll tell everyone. Tell them what? Harrison's voice boomed from across the room. That you're a bad investment. Go ahead. But remember, per your new contract, any unauthorized interviews will result in a breach that will cost you more than you've ever earned. You're an employee now, Liam. Start acting like one. Harrison ended the call. Charlotte sat in silence for a moment. It wasn't the euphoric rush of victory she might have expected in a movie. It was just closure. The final door slamming shut on a drafty, empty room. Are you okay? Harrison asked, his bravado softening. I think so. Charlotte stood up, smoothing her skirt. Actually, I think I'm better than okay. I think I'm free. That evening, Julian came over for dinner. He didn't mention the acquisition. He didn't gloat. He simply arrived with a bouquet of white hydrangeas, her favorite, and a bottle of vintage Bordeaux that ate on the terrace watching the sun set over the city skyline. Harrison told me, Charlotte said eventually, swirling the dark red wine in her glass. Julian paused, cutting his steak. Are you angry? No, she said honestly. I didn't think you cared that much about petty revenge. It's not revenge, Charlotte. Julian looked at her, his expression serious. It's housekeeping. He was a loose end, a nuisance that kept trying to drag you back into the mud. I simply swept him up. You bought a multi-million-dollar studio to sweep up. Charlotte raised an eyebrow. I would burn down the world to clear a path for you, Julian said quietly. The intensity in his voice made her breath hitch. Buying a studio was the polite alternative. He reached across the table, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. You are Charlotte Sterling. You are magnificent, intelligent, and kind. You deserve a life where the only drama is on a stage you control, not in your living room. I intend to give you that life. Tears pricked Charlotte's eyes for so long. She had equated love with pain, with sacrifice. She didn't know it could feel like this, like being cherished, like being elevated. Julian, she whispered. I think I'm falling in love with you. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. Good, because I'm already there. I've been there since I saw you walk onto that terrace at the Maidstone Club, looking like a queen who had just misplaced her crown. I knew then I wanted to be the one to help you find it. He stood up and walked around the table, pulling her to her feet, under the vast, twinkling canopy of the New York sky. He kissed her. It wasn't a performance. There were no cameras, no cheering crowds. It was slow, deep, and filled with a promise of forever. And for the first time in her life, Charlotte knew she wasn't playing a part. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The next day, a courier arrived with a package for Charlotte. Inside was a script, not just any script. It was the lead role in the prestigious theater production she had joined the board of. A note from the director was attached. We need someone who understands loss and grace and this. We think that's you. She didn't need Liam. She didn't need Hollywood. She had her talent, she had her family, and she had Julian. Charlotte picked up a pen and circled the word yes. The curtain was rising on Act 2, and this time she was writing the ending. The Starlight Awards were the pinnacle of the East Coast social and artistic calendar. It wasn't just an awards show. It was a coronation where old money met high art. This year, the buzz was feverish, not only because of the nominees, but because it would be the first public appearance of Charlotte Sterling since the news of her merger with Julian Thorne. And the acquisition of Mirage Studios had broken. Charlotte stood in front of the full-length mirror in Julian's penthouse. Her gown was a custom Valentino, a cascading waterfall of midnight blue velvet that hugged her curves and pooled at her feet. Around her neck sat the sterling sapphires, a necklace that hadn't been worn in public since her grandmother's time. Breathtaking, Julian's voice came from the doorway. He was in a tuxedo, looking devastatingly handsome. He walked over, resting his hands on her shoulders, his gaze meeting hers in the reflection. You look like you own the night. I feel like I might throw up, Charlotte admitted, smoothing the velvet over her hips. Everyone will be watching, waiting for me to trip, waiting for Charlie to show up. Let them wait, Julian kissed the side of her neck, sending a shiver down her spine. Charlie is a ghost. Charlotte Sterling is real, and she has nothing to prove. He turned her around, his hands sliding down to hold hers. And remember, I'll be right beside you. If anyone looks at you the wrong way, I'll buy their mortgage. Charlotte laughed, the tension in her chest loosening. You can't just buy everyone's debt, Julian. Watch me, he winked. The red carpet was a blinding gauntlet of flashes and screams. But this time, Charlotte didn't shrink. She walked with her head held high, her hand tucked securely in Julian's arm. When reporters shouted questions, Charlotte, is it true about the baby? Julian, when is the wedding? They simply smiled and kept moving, a united front of impenetrable grace. Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere was electric. Charlotte spotted familiar faces from her old life, producers who had ignored her, actresses who had sneered at her. Now, they practically tripped over themselves to catch her eye, offering sycophantic waves and toasted glasses. Funny how a last name changes everything, she murmured to Julian, as they took their seats at the front table. It is not the name, Julian corrected, pouring her water. It is the confidence. You are glowing, Charlotte. The ceremony began. Awards were given, speeches were made. Then came the category for Best Supporting Actress in a Play. The award Charlotte was nominated for, a surprise nod for her return to the stage. The presenter walked onto the stage. It was Liam West. A hush fell over the room. The producers, ever hungry for drama, had clearly arranged this for maximum impact. Liam looked thinner, tired. His tuxedo hung a little loose on his frame. He opened the envelope, his hands shaking slightly. The winner is, he paused, looking out into the audience. His eyes found Charlotte's for a second. Raw, naked regret flashed across his face. Charlotte Sterling for The Glass Menagerie. Applause erupted. Julian squeezed her hand. Go get it. Charlotte stood up. She walked up the stairs, the blue velvet flowing behind her. She took the statue from Liam's hand. He held onto it for a fraction of a second too long. You look beautiful, he whispered, the microphone picking up the faint, desperate sound. I made a mistake, Charlie. I see that now. Charlotte looked at him. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel triumph. She just felt distant, like he was a stranger she had met in a dream. It is Charlotte, she said into the microphone, her voice clear and strong. She gently pulled the award from his grasp. Thank you. Liam whispered, Charlie, like it was an incantation that could summon the old her back. Charlotte corrected him into a microphone. In front of everyone, that is not petty. That is reclaiming territory. He'd spent 4 years renaming her, shrinking her, making her small enough to fit in his pocket. She took her name back on stage, holding an award he had to hand her. Poetry doesn't get sharper than that. She turned to the audience, ignoring Liam standing awkwardly behind her. I spent a long time thinking that my worth was defined by how well I could support someone else's light, she began, her eyes scanning the room, landing on Julian's proud, unwavering gaze. I thought love meant disappearing, but I learned that real love and real art requires you to show up, to take up space, to be your own lead. She lifted the award. This is for anyone who ever felt like a supporting character in their own life. Rewrite the script, you're worth it. The ovation was thunderous. People stood up. Julian was the first, clapping until his hands must have stung. As she walked off stage, Bella Sinclair was waiting in the wings. She looked furious, her face contorted beneath heavy makeup. You think you won? Bella hissed, grabbing Charlotte's arm. You think just because you have a rich boyfriend you're better than me. I'm still the star. Liam still chose me. Charlotte looked down at Bella's hand on her expensive gown. Actually, Bella, she said calmly, Liam didn't choose you. He chose the path of least resistance. And as for being a star, Miss Sinclair, a security guard stepped forward, looming over Bella. Mr. Thorne has requested that you be escorted from the building. Your invitation has been revoked. What? You can't do that, Bella shrieked. I am a nominee. Not anymore, the guard said impassively, guiding her away. Sterling, Thorne Holdings has decided to go in a different creative direction for all future projects, and you are not in the picture. Charlotte watched Bella being led away, kicking and screaming. It wasn't a victory lap. It was just inevitable. She returned to her table, placing the award between her plate and Julian's. Did you really have her kicked out? She asked. She touched you, Julian said, taking a sip of his champagne. I have a very strict policy about people touching artwork, especially my favorite masterpiece. Charlotte leaned her head on his shoulder. You are impossible. I am devoted, he corrected. Later that night, at the after-party, Liam tried one last time. He cornered them near the bar, drunk and sloppy. You can't just erase us, Charlie, he slurred. We had history. Julian stepped forward, but Charlotte put a hand on his chest to stop him. I got this, she said softly. She stepped towards Liam. We had a history, Liam. But that is all it is? History. It's in the books. It's done. You were a lesson I had to learn, and I learned it. Now, please, move. You're blocking your view of what? Liam sneered. Of my future, Charlotte said. She looked past him to Julian, who was watching her with that look of utter, consuming adoration. Liam looked from her to Julian, and finally, the reality seemed to sink in. He wasn't the protagonist anymore. He wasn't even the villain. He was just a footnote. He turned and stumbled away into the crowd, disappearing into the noise and the dark. Charlotte turned back to Julian. Let's go home. Home, Julian asked, raising an eyebrow. Tribeca or the Hamptons? Wherever you are, Charlotte smiled. That is home. Julian kissed her forehead. Then let's go. As they walked out into the cool New York night, hand in hand, Charlotte knew the tabloids would have a field day tomorrow. But for the first time, she didn't care about the headlines. She had her name back, she had her heart back, and she had the love of a man who would tie her shoes in the middle of a storm and buy her a studio just to clear the air. She was Charlotte Sterling, and she was finally, truly awake. 3 months later, the headlines had shifted. The scandal of the breakup had faded, replaced by breathless coverage of the Sterling, thorn wedding of the century. But for Charlotte, the real story wasn't in the magazines. It was in the quiet, steady rhythm of her new life. It was a Tuesday afternoon, gray and rainy. The kind of New York day that made you want to curl up with a book. Charlotte was in her office at the theater, reviewing casting tapes for the next season, when her phone rang. It was an unknown number from a Los Angeles area code. She hesitated, then answered. Hello, Charlotte? A voice she barely recognized rasped on the other end. It sounded like Liam, but older, broken. It is me. I know, she said. She didn't feel the old spike of adrenaline or dread, just a mild curiosity. What do you want, Liam? I am at Mount Sinai, he said. I crashed the car last night. I wasn't thinking straight. Charlotte closed the file in front of her. Are you okay? Broken leg, a few ribs, concussion. He listed his injuries like a grocery list. They say I'll recover, physically anyway. A pause. No one's come to visit, Charlie. Not Bella, not my agent, not even my friends. I am alone. There was a silence on the line. Charlotte looked out the window at the rain-slicked streets. She thought about the man who had once been her entire world, now lying alone in a hospital bed, realizing that the applause had stopped. I am sorry to hear that, Liam, she said honestly, but I am not coming. Why? His voice cracked. Just for old time's sake, to say goodbye properly? We said goodbye, Charlotte said. We said it when you chose a photo op over my feelings. We said it when I dropped your jacket on the floor. And we said it when I walked off that stage with an award I won for myself. Please, he whispered. I just need to see a friendly face. Then call a friend Liam, she said gently. I am not your friend. I am your ex, and I am someone else's fiancé. Going backwards doesn't help you, and it certainly doesn't help me. You are heartless, he breathed. No, Charlotte said, her voice firm. I am healed. Goodbye, Liam. She hung up the phone. She didn't block the number this time. She didn't need to. He wouldn't call again. She sat there for a moment in the quiet office. Then she picked up her bag and walked out. Downstairs, a familiar Blacktown car was waiting at the curb. The window rolled down as she approached, revealing Julian. He was working on his tablet, but the moment he saw her, he put it away. His face lit up with that special warmth reserved only for her. Rough day? He asked, noting her expression as he opened the door for her. Just tying up loose ends, Charlotte said, sliding into the seat beside him. The car smelled of leather and his cologne, cedar and rain. It smelled like home. Well, I have something to cheer you up, Julian said. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Charlotte's breath hitched. Julian, we haven't even set a date yet. Open it, he urged, his eyes twinkling. She opened the box. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a key, an old-fashioned, heavy iron key. What is this? It is the key to the villa in Lake Como, Julian said. The one you admired in that magazine last month. I bought it, I thought. Maybe we could go there, just us. No press, no galas, no scripts, just Charlotte and Julian. Charlotte stared at the key, then at him. You bought a villa in Italy because I liked a picture. I told you. He took her hand, kissing her knuckles. I am efficient, and I intend to spend the rest of my life making you happy. I figured I should start with good real estate. Charlotte laughed, tears springing to her eyes. She leaned over and kissed him, a kiss full of gratitude, passion, and a profound, abiding peace. Yes, she whispered against his lips. Let's go. As the car pulled away into the New York traffic, merging seamlessly with the flow of the city, Charlotte looked back one last time. The skyline was vast and indifferent, a testament to time and change. Somewhere back there was a hospital room, with a lonely man realizing too late what he had lost. Somewhere back there was a rooftop party, where a girl named Charlie had woken up. But ahead was Lake Como. Ahead was the theater. Ahead was a man who loved her not for the role she played, but for the woman she was. The credits were rolling on her old life, but the lights weren't going down. They were just coming up on a new, brilliant, unscripted day. Here's the thing about men like Liam. They don't fall in love with you. They fall in love with what you do for them. Charlotte wasn't his girlfriend. She was his unpaid life coach, script supervisor, emotional support animal, and occasional furniture. The moment she stopped being useful, she stopped being visible. And Julian didn't need Charlotte to be useful. He needed her to be herself. He didn't ask her to shrink. He bought her a theater so she could expand. That is not a fairy tale. That is what happens when a man sees you as a person instead of a service provider. The cruelest part of Charlotte's story isn't that Liam betrayed her. It is that she betrayed herself first. She stripped away her name, her family, her power, thinking that is what love required. She made herself Charlie because Liam convinced her that Charlotte Sterling was too much, too rich, too intimidating, too real. But here is what Liam never understood. You can't dim a diamond. You can only make yourself look foolish for trying. So here is my question. When did you realize that supporting someone's dreams had turned into erasing your own? When did you understand that love isn't supposed to require you to become smaller? Drop it in the comments because I think we've all played Charlie at some point. The only question is, how long did it take you to remember your real name?